Hola, ¿qué tal? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Meg James, your Move to Spain mom, and I'm so excited to have you here for episode Veintisiete. We are talking for a 27th episode today about the topic that I hate talking about the most. And so I offer calls for families one-on-one who are considering making this move to Spain just to get the perspective of a mom who's done it. And this is where the call atmosphere starts to change when I start talking about taxes, Spanish taxes. And so I want to start by saying I am not a tax accountant. Praise the Lord. It's not an industry that I'm interested in working in all the time. But I'm grateful for connections and people that have helped us along the way, both in the US and here in Spain with taxes. It's an important part of life. It's an unfortunate thing to have to pay, but it is what it is. So let's jump into the knowledge that I, as an American mom, have had here as an American living in Spain and navigating these very confusing taxes. To get right into it, I got some of the most funny responses when I said this is the topic I was going to talk about this week. Like, yes, tell me everything. I just want to know how to keep my taxes low. And so I want to start by saying that having a great contact both in the US and Spain for us has been essential. Joining things like Facebook groups or just hopping on Google is not going to give you what you need to be advised on taxes correctly. We have been given multiple answers by multiple tax accountants here in Spain, and it is just now in year 2 that we are feeling comfortable enough to say, okay, this partner is best. I would probably not work with this person and their advice. You have to kind of learn it on your own for your individual situation. We're learning as well. And so someone's asking, yes, we have contacts that I will link in the below here just so you have them. Both in US, we have a US digital nomad tax accountant and we have a Spain tax accountant. And we just ask that they marry and that everything looks right. And so it's very important to have the right people on your team. But otherwise, just a really high level about our situation. So anybody, regardless of your visa type, who lives in Spain from the US or onward, but I'm just talking about the US here. If you are from the US and you live in Spain for 183 days, which is half of the calendar year, you are then considered a Spain tax resident. So the number one piece of advice that I give families considering a move is to look at the date you have scheduled for your move. I've actually had 2 or 3 families change the date of the tickets they were booking because they're like, oh my gosh, I was coming on July 1st or I was coming on June 30th. If you come for the school year and you're thinking you're going to be a US tax resident, if you come before, say, July 3rd or 4th to be safe, you are looking at becoming a Spain tax resident for that year. So tip number 1 is just to make sure you're aware of that 183-day mark that lets you now know that you are a Spain tax resident. The next thing I will say is that Spain taxes are incredibly high. And so one thing I tell my calls when I'm on them is if you're considering other places like Cyprus or Malta, there are more tax-friendly countries in Spain. Now, I would be a really bad move to Spain coach to talk you out of going to Spain, but the truth of the matter is that it's a pretty high tax country. You could be looking at a range of anything between 24% on a digital nomad visa to up to 47% of your income in Spain. So you have to have a really good knowledge base and you have to know who you're working with. So that's just important to start off with. Let me be sure to jump into your questions, but just as our own family navigates tax season for the first time, how it works, generally speaking, is 1, if you come on a digital nomad visa, then you're paying into an autonomo, which is either a monthly or quarterly way of paying into the US government that covers things like Social Security. Now, we are not on digital nomad visa as of this moment. We are planning on switching back to it in August. We were only on that visa for 1 month, and then we quickly switched back to volunteer visa for multiple reasons. So not knowing being on that visa type, we are on the volunteer visa. So we're in kind of the typical tax timing here in Spain. So unlike the US where tax season starts on April 15th every year, in Spain it's June 30th that you'll have received your notification of what you will pay by, and then you have until the opportunity to pay in June and November 30th. So like in 2 installments. Something that's different in Spain too is that you have to declare your taxes to Spain. You have to tell them your taxes versus in the US when they ask you to tell them, like they initiate the process. In Spain, it is up to you as an individual to start the process, which is why I think it's really important to have a professional. And so we are working one-on-one with our Spanish tax accountant, getting ready for the first time, since we were not here 183 days the first year we lived in Spain. We are working on what it looks like this year as we officially file. And so let me jump into your questions, and then that will walk through all things taxes as we go. The first person says, do you guys have Beckham law? And if so, any idea what you'll do when that runs out? And so Beckham law is a very commonly known, good kind of cheat code for Americans that are moving to Spain. The one thing that is not shared enough is that tax accountants here in Spain have different opinions on the Beckham law. So that sounds ridiculous because it's a law, right? How do you have an opinion on it? In the US, we find taxes are listed, they're posted. It's very straightforward. In Spain, we find some tax accountants in Spain are not comfortable saying, yes, you qualify as an American for the 24% Beckham law amount because you're a freelancer, because of this type of work you do. It's very situational to your visa and the work that you do, and that's why I recommend working with a lawyer one-on-one. We have found for when we move to the digital nomad visa and we do apply for Beckham law in August of this year to pay for the next tax year, we have found that this tax lawyer that I'm referring you here does support Americans who are freelancers or contract workers like us to be eligible for the flat 24% Beckham law. And so you have to make sure you're working with the right person. The past tax accountant we used in Spain did not think we were eligible for it. So you're gonna get a million opinions, and just be aware of that. It's part of the process. How to avoid double taxation. So this is a really good one because you don't have to worry about that. Having both a US and Spanish tax accountant helps just communicate that, but there is a double tax treaty here in Spain. So you do not have to worry about paying both the US and Spain on the same income. So for example, if I was to be billed $30,000 in taxes for the 2024 calendar year to be paid in 2025, I do not need to worry about having to pay US 30,000 and Spain 30,000 because you are eligible to only pay for one as an American living abroad. Now, there are other things as an American living abroad that are disadvantages, and some of them are you have to continue to pay Social Security and you have to continue to pay Medicare as an American living abroad from the US. That is not the case of all other countries. This is specifically for the US. And so working with our US digital tax nomad service, they take $2,500, say, quarterly from us to plan for those things. So on top of that, say $30,000 we were going to owe in taxes, we owe another $10,000 for Social Security and Medicare to the US. So if you get this bottom line number from Spain, from a Spanish tax accountant, you need to remember as a US resident living abroad, you will have to pay that Social Security and Medicare on top of that. So no, you will not be double taxed, but you do need to know that you're still going to be responsible to pay for that as well. And there's nothing you need to do to sign up for a double taxation treaty. It automatically is applied. As an American, you're eligible for things like the foreign earned income tax exclusion. So if you are a Spanish tax resident, you are able to not have to pay the US anything beyond that $100,000 threshold. There's all these different things. There's the foreign tax credit. And that's why I'm, again, not a lawyer, but it's important to speak with one because your situation will change depending on what you adopt for or choose. So for us, for example, if we were US tax residents and we chose that because there are some very minor situations where you can work with the Spanish government to prove that you are a US tax resident. One of them is volunteerism or mission work. So I'm just giving this kind of as a far out stretch. 99.9% of people, regardless of visa type, 183 days will pay to Spain. There's no way out of it. But let's just say you somehow got out of it and you're paying the US. You are then not eligible for this foreign tax credit, nor are you eligible for the FEIE, which could end up hurting you and you wish that you had just paid Spain's credit or Spain's taxes. So there's so many things to worry about, but double taxation is not one of them. You will never pay 30,000 to one, 30,000 to the other because the systems marry. If you paid Spain, we typically defer in April to the US. You would pay Spain in June or November. And then if for some reason you had paid the US first, they don't refund it, but they credit it for the next year. And so you will never be paying in full each year for both. Okay, so yeah, I'm kind of answering this now, but which tax do you file first? told that you're supposed to request an extension with the US, and that's what we've been told to, and that's what we're doing. So it's next week is April 15th. It's when I would be required to file taxes. I've even heard that Americans abroad have to file earlier because it can take longer, even as early as March 15th. We are choosing to extend because we're not 100% sure how the Spanish process will work. So my recommendation when you connect with a lawyer is to extend and say, hold on, I'm going to do it through Spain, and then anything that's left over, like Social Security and Medicare, you would handle secondary with the US. Because kind of the worst case situation financially would be you paying the US your full $30,000, finding out, whoopsie, I was supposed to pay it to Spain. You pay it to Spain, and then you don't get it back. You just get a credit for future years. So just something really important to look out for there. So let me open up some of your other questions and see. Most people are worried about the double taxation. Someone's wondering, like, what would the tax implications be of spending 3 months out of the year in Spain, 9 months in the US? So this is a hard, fast rule. And honestly, I think it's kind of a cheat code, especially if you are two individuals who don't have kids and are not worried about the school year. Two of these are, one, if you spend 183 days in Spain, you're going to pay to Spain no matter what. And if you are only in Spain for 3 months, but you're in the US for 9 months, then you're in the US the majority of the time. That's totally fine. You are able to just continue to pay US taxes. You would not pay Spain's taxes at all. This is only for people who truly are on a visa and have done that 183 plus day mark. Now, some of the hacks here to be thinking about to avoid this whole tax mess to begin with and to remain only a US tax resident would be, one, to stay in an EU nation for under the threshold of the visa amount of time, or bounce from location to location where you never pay anyone but the US. So for example, there are programs like Boundless Life or homeschooling co-ops that you might find that allow you to move your family every 3 months. I know an account that I'll tag here called Nowhere on Earth does this on Instagram, and they go 3 months to Bali out of the EU, 3 months to Italy in the EU, 3 months to the US, 3 months to Antarctica, right? I'm making it Australia. And so because they did not live anywhere for more than 183 days, they are US tax residents. So that is one way to avoid it. Now, why does our family not do it? We love community. We love staying in one place. It's not good financially, but we would rather pay the Spain tax and have a home, church, football team, school, kind of a normal life in our terms for our kids. It's worth the sacrifice. And so that's why some people wouldn't choose to do that. But pretty cut and dry. 183 days plus you pay to Spain. Otherwise, you're paying to the US. Most people, as I said, are mostly worried about double taxation. But someone says, does still owning a house in the US help or hurt? Which is a good question because we still own our rental property in the US. So of the 3 businesses that we run that are US based here in Spain, one of them being the rental company, we have to report that to the US regardless. So when I was saying earlier that we give our taxes to Spain, we pay to Spain first, it is very possible that in addition to that Social Security and Medicare that we're paying to the US, we could also have to pay on our income from our rental house a little bit too. Now, it's very prorated. It's not oppressive rental properties in the US that are taxed, but it definitely is a factor to look into. And so I tell people, if you have no interest in returning to your house ever, whenever your stint in Spain is done, it may make sense to sell, both for tax reasons, but also just for cash reasons, right? In our situation, we're just not sure when we want to come back. We have a farm that we want to keep in the family. It's not really just a house, it's kind of an experience. And so renting has been very lucrative for us and it's been something we enjoy, and it just comes kind of with the price tag of renting. And a side note, or with taxes, I mean for renting. And then a side note of that is that it gives our family a place that they could return to that's familiar and comfortable should we choose to come back. So that's another reason for us too. Someone's confirming that, as long as I move after mid-July, I won't have to pay taxes on a house that I sold. So this is a great question. I'm going to include in the link here to our specific lawyer we recommend for questions like this, Carlos, from American Legal Spain, because selling of homes is a different story than just taxation in general, like on income tax. And so this is one that I want you to connect with Carlos on. Any legal issue, something big, financial decisions, business decisions, we always go to Carlos first. So I'm going to recommend that you do the same. Someone says, have you been able to find one service that helps with both the US and Spain taxes? And the answer is no. We do have two separate taxes services, one in the US, one in Spain, and that works for us. They don't speak with one another, they just work both with us, and we kind of do checks and balances on both of them. But no, I have not been able to, nor was I searching for one service that does both. And then someone's asking, not working in Spain, but flying to the US, working for 2 months, file earnings in the US. Yeah, going back to that, 183 days is the threshold. So don't worry about paying taxes anywhere else that you travel for an extended period of time, unless you're there for 183 days. And then the last question is, are you paying Social Security in both countries? And the answer is no. So we are only responsible to pay Social Security due to our visa type at the moment to the US, not Spain. Now, when we do switch types to the digital nomad visa, because we'll be on a public visa versus a more like the private type visa that we're on, which is the student visa, then we would have to start paying Social Security quarterly as well, which is the Autonomo program. But we also have benefits then, like public health care, where right now we have to buy private health care. So a lot of that does depend on your visa. Let me just make sure that there are no other tax-related questions. I think people get a lot of overwhelmingly confusing advice on this topic, and I understand how it feels. It's very, very confusing. And another thing to add too is it depends a lot on the area that you live. So in Madrid, for example, there is no additional wealth tax, but in Malaga province, where we're moving next, they do have a wealth tax. And so we don't know what that looks like yet. And we keep getting multiple answers from different Spanish tax accountants on what that's gonna look like. So as someone who's kind of gone through this process, I think I would just recommend finding someone that you're comfortable with, who best understands your work type and visa type and family situation and goals. We use an online tracking system called Fiverr Workspace, which is free to track all of our income, all of our expenses for our 3 businesses. And it makes tax time so easy for us because it's all there. One of the disadvantages of Spain compared to the US is that you can take a lot less deductions out. So for example, in the US, when you buy a desk or a computer, you can easily just deduct that from a business. And then the net of that is what you report. In Spain, they want your total gross income that has nothing to do with the deductions that you take out. And so it can be much pricier for that reason to pay taxes at a higher percentage because you're reporting more than you would in the US for profit as well. So you just have to go with the flow. We're learning. It's still worth living here in Spain despite not fully understanding taxes. We prepare by keeping a separate fund, a separate checking savings account that just is ready to have our taxes paid through that. Because I think when you don't pay quarterly or monthly, then it can catch up on you and all of a sudden a huge amount is due. So that works for our family, both the tracking through Fiverr and then just keeping it aside to not use for other things. And so I hope that this was helpful in some way. I understand and I empathize with you how confusing and annoying taxes are, but I promise you that when you are sitting here in Spain and living a more balanced lifestyle for your work-life balance, and in the Spanish sun, especially now that spring has come, we're loving living in Spain again. Winter was tough here in Madrid. That, you know, it is what it is and it's tougher. And at the end of the day, we may end up spending more in taxes than we would in the US, but we're still glad that we had done the experience. So if you are looking to move to Spain and you don't know where to start, I would love to be your Move to Spain mom. So we can connect through my course, which is kind of the basic entry level way to learn more information, or we can hop on a one-on-one call and talk more about your situation. So looking forward to the next episode. Happy Semana Santa. It's almost time for Easter here in Spain and some time off for our kids. So looking forward to that too. Ciao.